case Chavez versus Gonzales involves the issue of freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and the public's right to information in relation to a controversial audio tape. This tape allegedly captured conversations between former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo and a COMELEC official, Virgilio Garciliano, discussing manipulation of the 2004 election results. After the audio tape surfaced, the Department of Justice or DOJ and the National Telecommunications Commission or NTC issued warnings to media outlets advising that broadcasting or possessing the tape could lead to liability under Republic Act No. 4200 or the Anti-Wiretapping Law. RA 4200 prohibits unauthorized recording, use, and disclosure of private communications, and the DOJ argued that the dissemination of the audio tape was a continuing offense under this law. According to the DOJ and NTC, those who possessed or aired the contents of the tape were committing a criminal act and could be subject to arrest and sanctions. This led the petitioner Francisco Chavez to file a case challenging these warnings, claiming that they infringed on the constitutionally protected freedoms of speech and of the press. The facts of the case are: Number 1, after the 2004 elections, an audio tape was released that allegedly recorded a conversation between former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo and COMELEC official Virgilio Garciliano discussing election result manipulation. On June 5, 2005, Press Secretary Ignacio Bunye revealed the tape to reporters, presenting two versions, one that is complete and another one that is edited. While Bunye initially confirmed the voice on the tape was President Arroyo's, he later took back this tape. Number 2, Attorney Alan Padilla, a former lawyer for former President Joseph Estrada, released what he claimed was the authentic version of the tape. This version included alleged conversations between President Arroyo, First Gentleman Jose Miguel Arroyo, COMELEC Commissioner Virgilio Garciliano, and other officials. Number 3, on June 8, 2005, DOJ Secretary Raul Gonzales warned media personnel that possessing or broadcasting the tape could lead to liability under the Anti-Wiretapping Law or RA 4200. Gonzales described possession or sharing of the tape as a continuing offense and suggested that those who were broadcasting it could be arrested. Number 4, on June 11, 2005, the NTC issued a press release reminding radio and television operators to comply with the Anti-Wiretapping Law. The NTC warned that airing the tape could result in penalties, including suspension or cancellation of station licenses as it violated broadcast standards and licensing agreements. Number 5, the NTC met with the Kapisanan ng mga Broadcasters sa Pilipinas or KBP, a broadcast media association, to discuss the situation. They later issued a joint statement affirming respect for press freedom but calling for responsible use of this freedom by KBP members. And lastly, number 6, Francisco Chavez filed a petition with the Supreme Court challenging the actions of Secretary Gonzales and the NTC. He argued that these warnings and potential sanctions violated the freedoms of speech, press, and the public's right to information on matters of public concern. The main issues in the Chavez versus Gonzales case are: Number 1, freedom of speech and the press. The case questioned whether the government's actions, such as warnings and statements, violated the constitutional rights to freedom of speech and the press. Number 2, right to information. It also examined whether these actions hinder the public's right to access important information on matters of public concern. Number 3, government overreach. The case explored whether the NTC and the DOJ exceeded their authority in issuing warnings and placing restrictions on media outlets. Number 4, legal justification. The court had to decide if the government's actions were justified using the clear and present danger test. Number 5, effect on the media. The case raised concerns that the government's actions could discourage the media from reporting on public issues due to fear of government retaliation. Number 6. Content-based regulation. The case discussed whether the government's actions were content-based, meaning they targeted specific speech or expression, which requires stricter legal scrutiny. Number 7. Different media protections. It examined whether broadcast media should have different and potentially fewer protections than print media, and whether that justified the government's actions. Number 8. Anti-wiretapping law. The case questioned whether the invocation of the anti-wiretapping law to restrict the release of certain recordings was valid, especially given doubts about the recording's authenticity. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of Francisco Chavez, saying that the warnings from the DOJ and the NTC to media outlets not to air the alleged wiretap conversations were against the Constitution. The court found that these warnings were an unlawful limit on freedom of speech and the press. It decided that the government did not show a clear and present danger that would justify restricting these rights. The court also pointed out that the warnings had a negative impact on media freedom by making them afraid to report. Because of this, the court canceled the actions of the respondents and protected the media's right to report freely. The decision made it clear that freedom of speech and of the press is a highly valued right, and the respondents did not have enough evidence to prove that national security or any other serious reason was at risk. The court also addressed the application of the anti-wiretapping law, also known as the RA 4200, and found that using this law to restrict the airing of the recordings was not enough to justify limiting press freedom. This was particularly true given the questions surrounding the authenticity and content of the tapes. My key takeaways from the Chavez versus Gonzales case include: Number 1, the case illustrates that while the anti-wiretapping law or RA 4200 is intended to prevent illegal wiretapping and protect privacy, it cannot be used broadly to suppress press freedom. The Supreme Court found that the government's use of this law to block the airing of alleged wiretap conversations was not justified, especially given doubts about the authenticity and content of the tapes. Number 2, the case shows that the Constitution strongly protects free speech and press freedom. Government actions that limit these rights are unconstitutional unless there is a clear and serious danger. Number 3, government agencies like the DOJ and the NTC must follow constitutional limits. They need strong reasons and evidence to restrict media reporting. Number 4, the case highlights the effect that government warnings can have on the media. When officials issue statements that discourage reporting on certain topics, it limits the public's right to be informed. Number 5, while RA 4200 or the anti-wiretapping law is important for privacy, it should not be used to limit free speech and press freedom. Applying this law must be balanced to avoid harming democratic values and public access to information.